You know, some stories are more than just stories. They're not just for entertainment. They're actually blueprints, foundational charters that explain exactly why a society is the way it is. We're about to dive into one of the most powerful examples you'll ever find, the Tongan myth of Aho'eitu, a single story that literally forged a kingdom.
So that's the big question, right? How can a simple tale about gods and mortals set up a whole political structure, define all the social rules, and justify a line of kings for centuries? Well, stick around, because that's exactly what we're going to unpack.
All right, so let's get into it. Our story kicks off with a hero who's caught between two worlds. His name is Aho'eitu, and his journey is about to change the course of Tongan history forever. So right from the get-go, Aho'eitu is completely unique. He's got one foot on the earth with his human mom and the other in the sky with his godlike dad. This dual heritage, this mix of human and divine, well, it's going to be the source of both his greatest power and his biggest problems.
So, driven by this need to know his father, Aho'ei travels up to the sky. And when he gets there, something pretty incredible happens. His innate worth, his sacredness, it's just immediately obvious to everyone, including the great sky god himself.
Now, what's really fascinating is how they all knew he was special. First off, his father just takes one look at him and recognizes him as Eiki, or superior, without even knowing who he is yet. Then he's allowed to eat in his father's presence. Now that was a huge deal, a massive sign of equality. And in Tonga, things like exceptional beauty and skill, like his insane talent at the javelin game, those aren't just cool traits. They're seen as physical proof of your divinity.
But as you can probably guess, when someone this special shows up, not everyone's happy about it. Aho'eitu's arrival doesn't just show his greatness. It sparks a really dangerous jealousy in the people who should have been his closest family, his half-brothers up in the sky.
And this is the absolute core of the conflict. They all have the same divine father, Tangaloa, but they all have different mothers. And in Tongan culture, this very specific family dynamic, well, it has a name, and it basically comes with a warning label for conflict.
The term is Tu'i, and the literal translation is just amazing, fighting umbilical cords. How vivid is that? It describes a relationship that, within the culture, is just expected to be competitive and full of friction, usually because the siblings are all vying for their dad's title and inheritance.
And this lays it out perfectly. If you share a father, you're Uhotao, and a rivalry is pretty much expected. But if you share a mother, you're Uhotaha, which means one umbilical cord. You're seen as being made of the same stuff, and you're supposed to support each other. So you see, the brothers' jealousy wasn't just them being petty, it was almost culturally programmed into them. And that programmed rivalry just explodes into something truly horrifying. They are so blinded by envy over the attention their father is giving this newcomer from Earth that they do the unthinkable. They attack Aho'eitu, they kill him, and then they cannibalize him.
But this horrific act isn't the end of the story, not by a long shot. In fact, it's the very thing that triggers a divine judgment that will create a whole new world order and transform Aho'eitu from a victim into the very first king. When the Skyfather, Tangaloa, finds out what happened, his justice is swift and absolute. He forces his sons to, and this is pretty graphic, vomit up all the pieces of Aho'eitu. And then, using his divine power, he magically puts him back together, bringing him back to life, totally whole and complete. Okay, now this is the moment that changes everything. The father makes a decree that becomes the foundation for the entire Tongan kingdom. He sends the resurrected Aho'eitu down to earth to become the very first Tu'i Tonga, the sacred king. And his murderous brothers? Their punishment is to be sent down with him to be his eternal servants, the Falafefa.
And these are not just vague, go-fetch-me-something servant roles. Their service is formalized into specific houses with very specific duties. So, the house of the eldest brother, Talafel, has to oversee and serve the king. Other brothers' lines become the royal undertakers, the king's warriors, the official party planners, and the caretakers of the royal grounds. Their crime and their punishment get literally woven into the very fabric of the royal court.
Okay, let's just hit pause on the story for a second and look at what's really happening here. This story is so much more than just a dramatic tale of sibling rivalry. It's what's known as a charter myth. A story that explains and justifies the entire social and political order of a society.
And this quote just gets right to the heart of it. Normally, rank is all about birth order. The oldest brother is the top dog. But this myth provides a divine reason for a younger, more competent brother to take charge instead. It creates a precedent for something called junior succession, basically valuing what you can do just as much as when you were born.
So the legacy of this one story is just immense. It gives the green light to a younger son taking the throne. It establishes that the king's power comes straight from the gods. It completely rejects the idea that might is right. I mean, the brothers tried that and look what happened to them. And it defines the core relationships between the ruler and everyone who supports him.
But wait a second, you might be thinking there's a contradiction here. If the oldest brother is supposed to be higher rank, how can Aho'eitu be technically inferior to his divine older brothers, but at the same time be so superior that even his own father bows to his greatness? While the myth has a brilliant way of solving this puzzle.
The key is understanding that in Tongan culture, rank isn't fixed. It's relative. It depends on the context. So, up in the sky, compared to his purely divine older half-brothers, he is technically lower rank, or Tu'a. But when he's sent down to Earth, compared to every single mortal being, his divine heritage makes him absolutely superior. He is Aki.
And this is the absolute genius of the myth. It takes all these complex, subtle, and even contradictory social rules about rank, inheritance, and family, and it weaves them all into one powerful, unforgettable story. It's a story that everyone can understand, remember, and pass on. It's basically a masterclass in how to build a society.
And all this leaves us with a final thought. The myth of Aho'eitu gave a clear blueprint for an entire kingdom. It kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What are the foundational stories, the myths we might not even recognize as myths, that define all the unwritten rules of our own world?